All right, so I'm gonna start recording now, and yeah, we can start the discussion by talking a little bit about what happened today, and not today, sorry, this week, and talk about, yeah, like you said, Michael, the responsibility that tech has in moderating public speech, or if you want to go the other way around.
Not
The
moderating.
fact that might affect someone's freedom of speech. So there are really two positions one can take, and a lot of in between as well. Sometimes, in this day and age, it seems that people are right or left, black and white, but there's a lot of in between as well.
Yeah, I think a lot of times, like when Facebook or Twitter, like suppresses someone or takes down their posts, even if it's something I really, really disagree with, a lot of times those people then get together on a more right-wing website. Like, I think that's what actually happened in 2 days ago with the protests and the riots, is that when Facebook blocks you, you then go on a really right-wing social media website, and sometimes it stirs up more anger. So I wonder what really the right approach is. I don't know the answer exactly.
There is a right-wing website out there, isn't there? Like some sort of like right-wing.
Oh, I guess there are many of them.
Yeah, but isn't there like a right-wing Facebook or something?
You're thinking of Parler, I'll bet.
Yeah, yeah.
Parler, both Apple and Google have removed the Parler apps, I believe, from their respective app stores in the.
So are these like chat rooms? And
it's like Twitter.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know anything about it because I haven't used it, but that's what I heard. Someone told me about
they're
it.
being cracked down on as well.
So they're not working, or
well, you can't get the app.
You can't get the app, so yeah.
But you can go on the website on your web browser, right?
If you're smart enough to do that, yes, you can. So you got to consider the demographic involved. So.
It's a thing, yeah. It's something to consider. Hi, Frank. Welcome.
Frank.
And
hi, Frank. Nice beard.
Nice beard.
Thank you.
Actually, happy 2021, I should say now. New year, new decade. Some people say it's not a new decade, but technically it's the new decade. So I'm going by the technicality. So I'm excited about it. It didn't start very well, I don't think, but hopefully it'll improve.
Way to softball it in there.
We're starting out actually, Frank, with because it's kind of impossible not to talk about it at least a little bit.
Yeah.
The events that have transpired, but in particular, we're trying to give it a little bit more of a philosophical bent, talking a little bit more about, in general, the responsibilities of social media in moderating stuff, or if you think that infringes on people's free speech, the fact that they should not do what they are doing now. What do you think about it, Frank?
Well, I don't know. I guess social media, when we talk about should it infringe upon people's speech, the thing that always comes up when you have to consider is, hate speech, or someone who has, brings about things that are directly encroaching upon other people's being, living and freedoms. That being said, I mean, as social media, Facebook, Twitter are companies, not Congress, not the government. They don't have an inherent, they don't have a contract, the same inherent contract to protect other people's freedoms in that way. Although I would think that'd be for their best to kind of mirror that, because that's what people have come to expect.
I understand exactly what you're saying. But I think even now that one is that freedom of speech does not extend to inciting a riot
No, I wouldn't. I wouldn't
or
say.
yelling fire in a crowded theater.
I would say those aren't even a case of, it's trying to put freedom over someone else's right to life. They're just right to being, someone died at the riot at
Oh yeah.
Congress. And, in any of those cases, we kind of have almost that hierarchy where it's like, yeah, freedom's important, but then I would go like, life, if you're encroaching on that
What
anyway,
about the freedom of the person you just killed?
yeah, that's the whole thing.
Yeah.
Veto.
And maybe that's not the only person. I mean, maybe that's just the first person.
Yeah. I mean, I've heard of the lady that was shot and died, and the police officer that had his head hit with a fire extinguisher died. I haven't heard of anybody else in particular.
Yeah, I'm just saying that this
I heard
this
there
might
were
not be over
5
yet.
deaths.
Yeah, so maybe it's not even just one. We're talking about some people dying.
Yeah.
3 people died of medical issues.
Yeah.
Apparently, one person tased himself and had a heart attack. Another person died trying to climb up the side or run up the stairs, had a heart attack.
Did you say someone tased himself?
Yeah, he
That's
tased
what I
himself
heard, was
in
that
a
someone had tased
particularly
himself.
embarrassing location, and
Oh
it
my God.
wound up killing him.
He tased
Yeah,
himself?
Yep.
Sometimes I tase myself, but I don't do it in a crowd.
And you probably
What
don't
is
do it in your
the-
drawing either.
Why? What is the background of this?
The events that happen in the Capitol.
Bareback.
I don't understand that. Why did he do that?
No, I think it was an accident. I don't think he did it on purpose. I can't imagine any man would do that on purpose.
Did
Yeah,
he
it
mean to
wasn't-
do it to someone else?
Possible. Don't know.
Or like he hit it on accident?
Yeah, probably.
I mean,
No.
most people don't know how to use a taser. I don't know how to use a taser. I've never used it before. I would probably tase myself because I have no.
I have tased myself with a friend's taser before. It was quite unpleasant.
What does it feel like?
I'll take your word for it, Frank.
Have any of you guys been like, have you ever worked on, what are they called? The giant rubber band with a metal dome. What are they called? The machines that have the shocking bolts that go at them after you turn them up, and they have a static charge, a huge static charge.
Van de Graaff generator?
Yep, that's it.
Yeah.
Van de Graaff generator. If you were young and foolish in physics class and maybe had one of those, and everyone dared you to maybe, I don't know, stick your tongue to it, it would be like that times like 100. It's bad.
Okay. Yeah, and if it
Not
was
saying
in
I
that
was the
area,
person that stuck their tongue to it. I'm just saying hypothetically.
hypothetically, okay, yeah, sure, hypothetically, yeah.
Hypothetically.
You know, to be a security guard at the Mall of America and carry a taser around, they tase you for 5 seconds before they let you carry a taser around.
Oh, I've heard of that.
Oh, so
Cops.
that you know what you're doing to another human being.
Yes.
I think a lot of police departments do that. Like, you have to get tased before you can use a taser.
I
That's
think
part of
that's-
taser training.
That's kind of cool. Yeah, but I think this for better or for worse. I mean, this thing is standing.
Approaching 3,701.
Carolyn, you gotta mute yourself because we're hearing the background. For better for worse, this sets a precedent of finally the tech companies are actually taking direct steps, decisive steps to actually moderate the public debate. Yeah, I mean, I think it's probably the right thing, but it's certainly gonna. It seems that this changes things. This changes what we've been able to expect so far from these companies. I don't know if you guys agree with that.
Oh, I mean, I think it's kind of almost an inevitability whenever you have a multitude people around each other, like complex systems, that you're going to have wants or values or anything or actions of any of these systems that encroach upon the other ones that are in proximity. And eventually you don't have to, but it is often fortuitous that, or conducive would be better stated, to have something to moderate or to keep everybody from kind of, going at each other's throats almost. It just comes to a breaking point where people go, this is enough. We've had enough and things needs to change. That would usually be a revolution. That's what it would be called. But
So is this the breaking point in that case?
In many ways, yes. This would be seen as revolution, not meaning like war or anything. Revolution meaning a drastic change in a certain frame of study, knowledge, or, in a way of life. And yeah, I believe this is one what we're witnessing right now. I mean,
well, and yeah, you had the events at the Capitol, but it's also kind of like, it's not just because some people died. It's because for the first time in a long time there wasn't exactly a peaceful transition of power in the United States, and it's not surprising. It's not surprising given the background, but it did come to pass that the transition of power, and we're not even done yet, obviously, but it hasn't. Already, we can't really say it was peaceful.
No, this has never happened in U.S. history.
no, it hasn't.
Yeah, so it is a big moment. It is a big moment that it's not, they're not exaggerating. I mean, it is a big moment. It is a big change.
I'm just curious because I think you guys are really smart, and I want to know what you think is going to happen. But you know how?
Thank you, David.
If you say something like, if you make an allusion to Pearl Harbor or 9/11, people know exactly what you're talking about with a very short phrase.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder, what short phrase are we going to use for this day? Because this is just as, or 2 days ago, it's just as memorable as Pearl Harbor or 9/11.
Well, the one that I would remember it for is probably Camp Auschwitz. Boy, that one
Why?
got me so steamed. Oh,
Yeah.
God,
I don't
thinking
know.
about it.
I don't know what you're talking about. Maybe
How
it's
was that?
I don't know.
No,
Oh, there was
I
a
don't know.
guy
It
who
was a
had
T-shirt.
T-shirt on
is
there that
the day that people violently took possession of the Capitol building, and the distant future, to what will we refer to this day?
No, I was saying that I didn't know about Camp Auschwitz.
the guy
I
with the
understood
Camp
your
Auschwitz
question.
shirt, and the
sorry.
other guy with the Confederate flag, which is the first time the Confederate flag has ever flown in the United States Capitol as well.
I think what
Yeah, we don't have like a word or a meme for it yet. It's just the Capitol riots. I think on Wikipedia it just says
Capitol
2021 Capitol riots or something.
I've seen people refer to it as 1/6.
1/6.
21.
It's
But
gonna.
it depends what happens next. I mean, if
Yeah.
they're
Yeah,
not-
it depends on if this was the worst part or not. I agree with that.
Yeah. Nobody wants to hear that January 6th, 2021 was almost as bad as January 10th, 2021.
Yeah. Now this
We don't
whole
want to hear
year,
it.
this
Yeah.
whole year is going to be one for the history books. It's going to be, not to mention all the shit that gets packed in before that, even before this year, that is probably going to become. I think Trump's getting Herbert Hoovered is what I'm saying. I think he's going to be a president whose name is just going to be pretty much synonymous with, oh, you remember all this shit? Yeah, pretty much.
well, he's barring somebody else. He's taken the lead in the worst president in U.S. history.
He's yeah, he has. Never mind. Fuck it. I always want to go to some. I mean, I always wanted to give it a more historical, like.
I couldn't have put it better myself, Frank.
Oh, fuck! I want to. I really want to.
Well, it's getting hard. It's getting hard with this final month.
Yeah,
it's gonna get hard to.
Yeah, I mean, before it was a close race between him, James Buchanan.
Buchanan, that's who I was going to say immediately, and then fuck me.
But Buchanan transferred power similarly to Lincoln.
Fuck.
Yeah, Buchanan his actions led indirectly
to the Civil War.
Yes.
Because of his inaction and inability to deal with the changing the changes in the South, not being able to keep up with what was going up in the North, and pretty much he didn't touch or do anything. He just sat on his freaking hands. I think we would all prefer if Trump had sat on his fucking hands.
Yes, much preferable.
His tiny little hands.
But I don't know. Maybe Trump will still lose that race because there won't be a civil war after this, hopefully. I don't know.
I don't think there's going to be a civil war.
Me neither.
So don't say it out loud.
I don't think so
don't
either.
Say it out loud.
What I mean. That's what I mean. I mean, maybe
okay,
you
don't say it out loud thing. Come on.
I won't say this. There is one good thing that actually came out of this, and that
let's go into the attic before you say anything.
Well, it's like the end. It's like the end of the movie where that one person says, "Well, it can't possibly get any."
Yeah, I'm kind
shut the hell up. Shut the hell up.
I'm tempting fate here. Yeah.
Well, no, it could always get worse, but there is one good thing that came out of this is that for many people who weren't really paying that much attention to politics, and let's face it, most people don't. This was a wake-up call, even for many people who supported Trump, who suddenly realized, oh my God, this is actually what's leading to. Because there are plenty of people who just voted for Trump because I want lower taxes.
Yeah.
I don't like socialist, and and what is socialist? Well, I don't really know. I just don't like him. But this is the real wake up call that, I mean, wait a minute, we're the bad guys here.
Mm.
And the funny thing about that day, of course, is so many people were so happy about how that day started off, right? Because of the Georgia runoffs. And they were all dancing in the streets about, hey, we're going to regain control of the Senate. And everybody was breaking out the champagne. But then, boom, crunch. And within the span of, maybe 8 hours? Less than that?
They didn't scare John Ossoff the winner until about 1 o'clock that day after people had already stormed the Capitol.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, going back to the issue of tech moderation or censorship, whichever you want to use, I'm not sure if it's actually good in the long run, because I think it worked out well this time because Facebook and Twitter, they control they kind of have a monopoly on social media, right? So because they have so much power, and they have the ability to prevent things from coming on their website and being said, and it has a really large impact because everybody uses those platforms. So this time I think it was a good thing. However, I think if it continues too long into the future, a lot of disgruntled people will start moving to other platforms, and then those will grow bigger. So basically, in the long run, I think it might have a bad effect because these alternative platforms would gain more momentum.
Well, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And I may have to have this. I agree with you, and I may have to have this discussion with another person.
Yeah.
And so I'm asking, for your help in persuading that other person.
Persuading them to what?
Tell me more about how you preserve freedom of speech and be able to have the kind of impact that you're talking about. I agree with you, but I have to persuade somebody else that it was the right thing to do.
This is not a freedom of speech issue, though, right? Because for freedom of speech basically falls from the First Amendment, which talks about that Congress may not make a law that bridges that prohibits something. This has nothing to do
we're not
with
talking
Congress.
about the
This
laws.
has to do with private companies and their terms of service. And that's basically would go into the area of contract law, right? When you sign up for one of these things, you agree to a set of terms of service. Now, whether one actually is able to read and understand what those terms of service are, because they're often written in legalese, is another interesting issue that I think Allison has touched on a time or two.
Them.
But in point of fact, that's the governing law here, is the contract law that people agree to a terms of service.
Well, it's not just that. I mean, there is a fundamental debate that's been going on is whether things like Facebook are essentially basically the public square. And Facebook's argument, many of these arguments would still say they're private property. This is not the public square.
Yeah.
You're only there because Facebook is allowing you to be there, just the same as if I invited somebody to my house and said, well, you can have a conversation about any topic you want, but if I don't like it, I'll kick you out.
Yeah, but you're only allowed in the public square because the government is allowing you in the public square. I mean, if we're going to say it isn't because it's being allowed by X or any given X, then I would look and I'm like, no, in all cases, there is an allowance for you to be in a place. You can be loitering. You can be, drunk and disorderly in a public park or something like that and be kicked out.
Well, that gets back to a question that David's brought up quite often about where rights originate from. And generally the view behind why we have the Bill of Rights was that freedom of speech is actually already a given right. It's government can't restrict it except with the view of for public safety is about the only thing they can do as long as you're in the public square. But then the view of property is, yes, you have rights to your property and how you use it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think
speech on your property.
I think there's three ways to view this. One's legally, what are people's rights? One's morally, what are people's rights? And then the third is, put aside all legal and moral questions, what would the effect be of censorship or moderation, whichever you prefer to use? So
the effect would be censorship or moderation. What is self-evident?
Yeah, but I guess then what would follow from that? What would be the dominoes that would fall after you do it?
That would be something we would have to observe, which would be either moral or ethical.
Yeah, just to help out Michael, I think he's talking, aren't you, Michael, about the fact that some people will splinter off and
yeah.
I think, which is it's a valid concern. That's how I was
okay. I think so.
Well, Frank's thinking, I'm just going to say, if you want to be able to use the public square metaphor at all with something like this, you better damn well pass net neutrality bills then, because as long as the transmission infrastructure is run with tight fists by private companies, it doesn't really matter what the sites do because they all depend on the infrastructure.
But at a minimum, regardless of what you think, whether it's appropriate to restrict speech to protect this freedom, or if it's more appropriate to freedom to protect speech, either way. To me, the issue is more
there is real world arguments. I mean, if you look
Hold on, David's not done. You got it.
Well, I'm not going to be able to finish because the train left the station.
You had one too many or not enough.
Too
Just
many,
not
Dave.
the right amount.
I mean,
have a-
if you look at what the PRC, the People's Republic of China, has been saying, and what they're trumpeting the last few days, is that their model, which does restrict speech, is the way to go because clearly allowing this much speech is leading to public chaos.
Well,
That is in the interest of the state.
Yeah.
To restrict speech.
that
Yes.
actually came up earlier, though.
Yeah.
And to my knowledge, and I could be wrong, that's never happened, but there's a first time for everything. Is that speech that incites violence is already illegal.
True.
So protection, the freedom of speech does not currently extend to inciting a riot. So it's not an issue of free speech. It's whether or not inciting a riot is something you can be removed from office for.
Yes.
Right, but the PRC argument extends further because it's a subjective term about when you decide which is incitement. They've long argued, and it's one of their central arguments, particularly regarding Hong Kong, that saying that Hong Kong should be not governed from Beijing is inciting a riot.
That's true. Yeah, what you say is true.
Yeah, you're playing.
I don't
devil's
disagree with
advocate
that.
very, very effectively, Sashir.
What if like Facebook and Twitter were to be treated as media companies? Would that like
It might be
mean that-
time.
if they were treated as media companies, like why they would be like set to like same level of scrutiny, regulation, legality as anybody else, and then it's up to them to make sure that they have an effective way to weed out crazy comments and crazy because right now the Twitter which the president used was used in a bad effect, but there are also like many instances in the world where the same Twitter and the same Facebook were used in good effect to
Correct.
to make things better, for the country, for the people, to fight against injustices and to take up arms to fight injustice. So I'm not sure, like I don't exactly know like what sort of rules and regulations and legality are the media companies take, so that like when they furnish news, it's with some level of scrutiny, with some level of journalism and ethics and some peer reviews, to make sure that information is
So-
fact and correct.
And maybe I can add to that thought. Is it a situation where Facebook legally needs to play by the same rules that we apply to the New York Times?
Right, that's what I mean.
Well, let's say, let's put this into a hypothetical situation. Let's say I post something on my account, my Facebook account, and I post a status update that isn't entirely factual. It says something about X, where X can be any given thing, and it doesn't. My opinion or whatever is not justified in the eyes of Facebook or whoever's running the thing to be factual. So they come over and they say, this isn't factual. Where they may take it down, they may revise it, they may do anything. But this would all go back to, if they were going to regulate in this way, media company, Facebook, government, any person, how do they know? It's a knowledge-based question. It's epistemology. How do they know when they regulate it is factual, that what they're doing is as it actually is, and that this opinion that they're foregoing would be necessarily negated by what they're factually implying, what they're
Well,
putting on top
yeah.
of it.
I think maybe
I guess
maybe
what you're
maybe
saying
it's
is
related
we're
for the
just
level of
supposed.
impact. Sorry. Carry on. I'm sorry.
Oh,
Facebook
I
art
guess
does
what
that.
you're.
yeah, they do to an extent.
I guess what you're saying is that we're just supposed to assume that you would apply reasonable rules equitably, and we're just not supposed to question it. And we don't get to know the source of your information or the logic that you use to decide whose speech should be allowed and whose shouldn't.
Yeah, to an extent. I mean, Facebook, we already talked, they're not Congress, they are private companies. So in many ways, they assume almost a Leviathan-esque sovereign role, where it's like, hey, what I say goes in my backyard. It doesn't matter. If I say it's fact, then it's fact. But if we were to treat them like a media company with some sort of responsibility to the people, where it would be, do you have something to say, Craig?
I do.
Okay, you can go ahead.
Well, media companies, if you're talking about things like radio and television and print,
I'm
of course,
specifically
covered-
thinking of newspaper mainly.
okay.
Because the fact checking.
Because I was going to say,
level.
if you think of things like radio and television as media, the two words that I would say to you are Rupert and Murdoch.
Yeah, I know.
And yeah, then.
Well, not just that, but that is like, obviously, you know, it's a big offender.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think, you know, you raise a good point, Craig. I was thinking the same thing. That's kind of another discussion, but it's true that even media companies, are they being regulated properly? Because whatever comes out of those places,
Well, there used to be
not
something
really
called the fairness
anymore.
doctrine that no longer exists.
So
Well, that's why Fox claims it's not news. They have in court cases literally claimed they're not news.
oh boy.
Well, but it's called Fox News, right? I mean, it's confusing situation.
Yeah. But the
Dave
thing
said
that
Tucker Carlson's show or Hannity isn't.
the thing this goes back to, though, is actually a classic philosophical argument brought up by Hobbes in Leviathan, where he brought up what of a situation where we have sovereigns of sovereigns or multiple sovereigns, the idea of multiple rulers in the same area who all have the exact same decree can say that thing is factual or as it is, and they would contradict each other. And he actually brought up that it would be a meta regressive state, because if you had sovereigns that can contradict one another in his system, you would have to anoint another sovereign. And if you had another sovereign that you also anoint to keep two sovereigns, then they contradict each other, you would have to anoint another two sovereigns, and so on and so on. But the basis that actually goes back to here is that, did you sign the contract? Did you sign the contract to go on Facebook? Did you sign the contract to be born in the USA? Then the thing is, yeah, the information that you got is being regulated by whomever's contract you signed to go in and act, do your daily life in that area. I mean,
you could argue also that Facebook has a monopoly, so we don't really have a choice, too much of a choice for an alternative thing. We could, but there would be hardly anyone on it. Everyone's on Facebook.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. It's they have that situation
that is a problem,
where
yeah.
I could go other places, but all my friends are here. All the people I want to interact with are here, and in order to get them over to this other area, I would have to convince all of them to leave, and come over here, which can be, inconvenient. Americans don't do inconvenient.
There isn't really an alternative to Facebook at this point. I mean, what is the except, I mean, maybe something like Parler that we were talking about before, for people that have a very specific point of view. But as a general rule, I mean, there isn't really an alternative to Facebook. It has become a mainstay of life.
There's Instagram, Snapchat. I mean, how many people under 30 are regularly posting on Facebook?
Yeah.
No, well, I mean, I mean, in terms of like a social network where people do what people do on Facebook. There are other services.
I understand what you're saying, Bruno, and mostly I agree with you, but I do have this one little perspective thing. We had a guy locally that was the CEO of a lumber company. It was a sawmill. They made flooring and things like that. And the company was very successful under his leadership. He actually bought the company. And he wanted to share the success of the company with his employees. And long before it was anywhere near a discussion of family leave, legally required of an employer, long before that, he built a daycare center for his employees. And one of the people who would benefit from having this daycare center, because she had young children, had an issue that she thought he should put something else in. In other words, having a daycare center and having it fully paid for was not enough. She wanted more.
Yep.
And to top it all off, instead of going to him and discussing it with him, her first move was to write to the newspaper. That's the very first thing she did. So naturally, that bothered him, and today that facility, he took it away. He decided he wasn't going to do a daycare center. He gave it to the Veterans Administration. A several $1 million building. He just gave it to the veterans, and he didn't sell it. So that suggests to me that he was fully dedicated to doing everything he could to help all the people around him. And he got nothing but grief. And he persisted, I think that's admirable. But the reason I bring that up is that Zuckerberg, and maybe a couple of other guys, don't know, invented Facebook. And to say there's no alternative to something that he invented is to demand of him something he cannot possibly provide.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. Yeah, but I'm not really demanding.
That's a strong word. Yeah.
Yeah, to be fair, I mean, because I know what you mean, but I'm just pointing out the fact that, and I don't even know if I agree with myself. I mean, there is a you can make the argument that yes, there is an alternative to Facebook, or there could be an alternative to Facebook. That is a perfectly valid argument. Maybe that's a good argument. I'm just saying that if there is no alternative, if that is true, we have to take that into consideration. But I mean, maybe the fact that there is no alternative is not permanent. Maybe one can argue if Facebook doesn't do things right. I mean, there are lots, like Sashir said, there's lots of social media companies appearing.
Just to be
There
clear,
will be a competitor to Facebook, a direct competitor to Facebook that will take away market share.
Just to be clear, I totally agree with you. That's just one of the things I wonder about. That comes in, that has to be a part of my thinking.
Of course. And this is a very complex issue. I think it even goes back to what Craig introduced in the conversation before, is that yes, to some extent, they're the boss, they make the rules, Zuckerberg makes the rules, this is a private company. But the conversation about social media is a very important conversation, and it's largely a conversation about public discourse and public conversation in the 21st century. I mean, the writing is on the wall.
If 2 points that I would make real quick. Once upon a time, there was a thing called MySpace that used to be the 900-pound gorilla in social media, and they died and got replaced. And once upon a time, there used to be a search engine called Alta Vista that was the 900-pound gorilla of search engines, and they got replaced. Guess what? It's going to happen again. And these guys may have current market dominance, but eventually someone's going to come up with a different and better gimmick, and
It's
suddenly
likely to happen
they're
again.
going to become.
And that eventually may
next
be a
big
long
deal.
time, just like Sears and Roebuck. You know,
But yeah, I think the question is
it will
more.
happen. You're right, Craig.
I think the question is more
Likely to happen.
at any given time, will there be one main place? Because like Facebook right now is really the one main source, and the thing is, social media, it's kind of more efficient for everybody to be in one source.
Yep.
So, but the thing is, when you have one source, then the CEO has so much power over everything. So there's that kind of dynamic there.
Yep.
If I could bring the conversation in a slightly different direction, I don't think the problem is really an issue of free speech. I think the problem with things like Facebook, YouTube, is how their algorithms essentially radicalize people. If you look at the nature of why Facebook is successful, it's because it learns about what your preferences are and it steers you towards that. So, for example, I get a lot of stuff about martial arts. And just stuff that martial arts I don't even do.
Well,
But it's because it's seen me interest. What happens though is that this is why the Russians were successful, is that they gamed the system. Is that if I start looking up things about the oppression of white people, guess what? The algorithm will say, oh, this person's interested in this sort of thing. And will start steering me towards that. So especially because they're monetizing the interest, they will start feeding you ads or things that are basically ads that masquerade as essentially posts or memes or other information. That's basically propaganda.
Yeah, I read this article. It was a soccer article, and I'm sorry I'm interrupting, Sashira. What I'm saying is like totally off topic.
Go ahead.
I read this topic, this article, and this is a terrible soccer website, really terrible. But now, like every time I look at my phone, the articles of this website pop up. Don't know what to do about it. It's just like when you do one thing, they just keep feeding you the same stuff.
Well, that's just your phone using classical inductive reasoning. I don't see what's wrong with it. I mean, it's observing your patterns and it's coming to a general conclusion off a complete set of data. What's wrong? You guys do that. Hold on. And I know Shashir brought this up with an algorithm and the Russians being able to read it. You guys realize you do that algorithm in everyday life around other people all the time, right?
Oh,
That's
yes,
a
of course.
rhetorical algorithm. That is not just on a computer. The thing that thing is doing.
I understand what you're saying, Frank, and that concerns me too. But it occurs to me that the people who program those computers or who make those decisions may not. I have no evidence that they've made a decision that is just.
That is true, and also
So
it's a loop. It's a loop because that's a big problem in the dynamic. I don't know if you watched we gotta talk about. We gotta make like one meeting just about that documentary on Netflix, The Social Dilemma, and they talk about that, and that is a real feature of these algorithms, and that is like a design problem. It's kind of on purpose, but it is a problem because it is a loop, like. Yeah, you read an article on this website. Okay, we're gonna keep feeding you this.
Okay.
Even if you don't want to.
It's
Like,
like the
keep
algorithm
getting
is
the
like
same thing.
I know how to solve this though. The thing is though, anytime that something feeds into your presupposed bias, the way to forgo the just circular area of bias is to look at justification of reasoning in the proposition. You know, you're going to this article over and over again because you like this person, the minute you start to do a reductive, or I'm sorry, a recursive reasoning area of why you like this thing and start going in deductively, you actually have to justify it through logic. It can't do that anymore.
Sometimes you don't even like it. You know, I like soccer, but this is a terrible soccer website. I mean, it's
Craig,
very badly written. It's
I do.
obviously not a.
Yeah,
don't
you
have
want to
any
solve
problem.
the problem of being tracked with ads and stuff like that? Get a browser that lets you differentially block cookies.
you can do that too.
Because it's the internet
I don't-
cookie,
I
which
don't
was
think that-
invented by
I don't
our
think
good
that-
friends at Netscape, that is the source of all this problem.
But
And
just
modern browsers, though, you can do on a site-by-site basis, you can tell it how to handle cookies. And if you want to make the effort to do that, you can eliminate most of this tracking.
Sure. But I don't think that it's the algorithm which is the problem. The algorithm is okay. They designed this computer wizardry to serve you content based on your preferences, your behaviors, and this and that. But it's actually the content which is the issue. Because, like that example of Russians, yeah? You had 50,000 Russian authors coming up with spurious articles about, you know, Hillary Clinton murdering some few people, some big conspiracy against Bill Clinton, and that content, the algorithm picked it up and it served it to the right people. And then suddenly, yeah, you know, you see those manifestations of those conspiracy theories like just go crazy. So it's like somehow like you have to kind of like understand where that content is originating from, who's writing it, and then serve it accordingly, because otherwise the algorithm is doing exactly what it is designed to do.
Right, but yes, that's true. But this is the point: is the content is targeted. It's not just like someone creates a site saying Hillary Clinton murdered people in Benghazi, and then it just kind of sits there and it's just in the rest of the wash. If I go onto Facebook and I post a pic saying Hillary Clinton, and I write a post saying Hillary Clinton is a criminal, just because the algorithm doesn't really care about what I said. There's no value judgment. The fact that it's looking at Hillary Clinton criminal, it will start suggesting, and because it's monetized, it will start playing me ads from sites with names like Angry Patriot saying Hillary Clinton's a criminal.
It will basically say if Hillary Clinton and criminal, then here's your article about Benghazi. Is what.
So that's where like the notion of like being treated as New York Times come into play, because like if Facebook is forced to make sure that the content is newsworthy, which is like it passes some sort of like a litmus test before you are, you know, then I think like it might be okay. And then you may have like, you know, degrees of like security where if some news is causing like a mass movement, is very widely being shared, it gets more scrutiny than, you know, something which Frank posted in his morning with his morning cup of coffee, you know, may not be worth the time because it was read by like 10 people, and who cares, right? I do care.
I care.
An example of it is this QAnon phenomenon. That's an example of something that is completely like ridiculous.
Yeah, it's bullshit.
Ludicrous,
it's completely bullshit.
Really, but it has gained traction. It has gained traction in a surprising way, and it's obviously not factual. It's baseless, but it has gained a lot of traction. And TK just posted this video on I don't know if you saw it in the chat, and it was these people on YouTube harassing Lindsey Graham because they think he's a traitor to the Trump nation or whatever it was. It was just some crazy thing. But the craziest thing was that they started shouting that he was a sex trafficker or sex abuser, you know, which obviously tells you that those people are like part of the QAnon gang. But it's just so ridiculous that obviously no one with a little bit of, you know, that thinks reasonably would go for those things. But then you start thinking about how social media works, right? And these people have been fed these things again and again and again and again. And it's not like that the computer is trying to do this in an evil manner, that they're trying to indoctrinate them. But these things happen with this dynamic that we have right now, these algorithms feeding things to us in a loop. It doesn't matter what you're reading, I mean, but you're going to get it on in a loop, and that favors stuff like QAnon and all kinds of crazy things gain traction for good or for bad, but a lot of it is for bad, unfortunately. And that's like going back to what Sashir was saying, it does radicalize people. And these kinds of dynamics, I mean, they will have to be addressed at some point. If not, we're kind of screwed.
I mean, the whole thing I hear mainly is this is entirely, I already brought this up a bit, this is entirely an epistemological problem. It's a problem that the facts and information that were being brought about, QAnon or Facebook or any area, if it actually correlates to what's happening in the actual world, or is it just simply a rhetorical trick, a trick to basically make me go back into what I want to hear. All I know you can dismiss every single fallacy, and I mean, I'm sorry, every single what is it? What do I want? A conspiracy theory with an application of the modal fallacy, if you know what that is, which is to recognize things as possibly true or necessarily true. And conspiracy theories create possible truths that lead to necessary truths. They are fallacious. That is to say, they use if, possible, must, or any conjectures, and they come to a factual end in their area where they say it must be the case, this is how it is, or something like that, that is actual to reference. They do this all this time, and it's why they're completely debunked logically.
Frank, interrupt. I just want to point out the most obvious example of this is Ancient Aliens.
Oh yeah, it's a huge one. Like
we can't actually
shows up.
We can't say for sure it's aliens, but it's aliens.
It must be aliens. It could possibly be aliens. Therefore, it must be aliens. No.
Explain it, Frank.
It was aliens, Frank. Go with it.
Oh
no, I'm kidding.
The worst one I actually know is Drake's formula, and my friend using it all the time for the argument of there must be intelligent life.
I just watched Indiana Jones 4 that they go with that, they go with, it was the aliens.
Anywho, but as to radicalizing people because the algorithm is recognizing your tendencies and feeding you more to the ends of those tendencies, that comes to the area of, I really hate to say this because I hate this fucking word. It comes to the area of common sense and single responsibility of the person. I kind of got at this with the recursive method where the person, you have to be a 2-year-old for a second. You have to ask why I agree to this fucking shit. Otherwise this can go for any area, not just the algorithm. You're going to keep going into it. It's okay. You go to a candy shop, you buy soda. The shop owner notices that you like soda. He keeps giving you soda, but as a consequence, you start gaining weight. Okay? Are you going to look at him and be like, oh, how dare you recognize I like soda and keep recommending it to me when I'm buying it? I would go, no, you need to say, why am I gaining weight while drinking all that soda? As a consequence, is there a correlation, and start another inductive pattern?
And it kind of boils down to that algorithms feed you information, but somebody has to consume them too in order to actually make it effective. And what we have control of, I'll go Ethan Stoic here for a moment. What we have control of is our consumption. And this is why I would consider skepticism to be a very healthy and pragmatic philosophy when it comes to pretty much everything. And that even goes back to something that follows Reagan's wonderful axiom, trust but verify.
So long as you keep your skepticism rooted in good faith. Remember, good faith. Never do bad faith skepticism.
Greg, I like your background, man. What is that?
Beg pardon?
I like the background which you have. Like I
Oh,
start.
it's the Earth from the ISS
Oh, nice.
at just about sunrise. There,
Craig is lost in space.
always.
It does.
I
Andrew Will
have
Robinson.
I have one of those background things too. It looks like a messy office.
Mm-hmm. Good
Background,
representation there.
bottles, yeah.
And from from space, Craig, what is your insight into all our predicaments on Earth?
From space.
Yeah. Space
I think the promise of humanity becoming a multiplanetary species is probably somewhat over optimistic given the current state of affairs, just because of what it's going to take to actually transplant a sufficiently large portion of people to another planet.
Now, just so I
in order to be
just
sustainable.
so to make sure that I understand what you're saying, because I think I'm following you along. Do you have some idea of how long we're overly optimistic? I mean, is it 50 years, 100 years, more?
You can't tell, right? Because you can't forecast technology worth a damn.
Yeah.
And pretty much any attempt to do so is doomed to failure. So no, I wouldn't even. I mean,
Those
I can't
blasted
even. I'm even
paradigm
skeptical of my
shifts.
own prediction that it won't happen.
We have
Well,
to assume
you
it
have
would
to
be a
be
long
because-
time.
Probably none of us know the answer.
Right.
Or would be able to discern the answer. But I would be willing to bet that all of us know there is an answer.
Well,
All of us suspect there might be an answer.
Yeah.
If we are to assume a
Just
truth or
like
false value, sure.
At any given moment in time, one could say there are X number of birds in the air. Well, who wants to go out and we're never going to know how many were in the air at that precise moment. We might have some means of designing something that could detect that, but that wouldn't be worth the effort. The fact is we know, even if we don't pursue it, we know there is an answer.
Yep.
there
And
are
you
people
do,
actually.
you do some, yeah, you do something that's called a Fermi problem, and Fermi problems are the back of the envelope type of order of magnitude calculations that you do to give you that kind of. So I'm going to be interviewed by a guy, I think in a couple of weeks, who interviews a person a day, and he's talking to people about NASA's plan to put people back on the moon by 2024. And so again,
who's
my
interviewing
skeptical part is going to shine through a little bit because I've been being fed that bill of goods for 40 years.
Yeah.
Well,
That, oh yeah, we're going back to the moon.
So
real soon now.
who's interviewing you, Craig?
Real
What's his name? Let me get his name, because it's a guy I met on Facebook who
I think this
radio,
could be-
newspaper.
yeah, he's in Houston, I believe, and yeah, they did an article about him for having been interviewing a person a day.
well,
Da.
according to Space
Nathan
19,
Price, that's his
What?
name.
according to Space 1999, we should have a moon base, and not only should we have a moon base, the moon should have left the solar system.
Well, yeah, but as you and your friend pointed out, by 2021, we should all be dressing like humongous too from Road Warriors. So I don't know.
Well, this is Space 1999. I mean, in the intervening 22 years, we could have society could have collapsed, and we could have had a moon base.
Since we're on the subject of predictions, what do you guys think the new decade? What are the big things that are going to happen? Like, what are things going to look like in the next 10 years? Like 10 years from now, I would say the last 10 years, one of the biggest differences is the biggest changes was actually what we're talking about or discussing. Society has changed. Social interactions have changed. Now we have social media, and 10 years ago, it wasn't a huge thing, but now it's everything. Especially, I mean, the pandemic has accelerated things exponentially. And I'm assuming that we'll kind of go back to where we were before. But so this is not normality from now on. But I mean, social media is a big part of life. Um, like, are we gonna
Well,
see some huge changes like that in the next 10 years? Probably.
I'll go
That's a
again real
very
quick
good
and then we'll
question.
shut up for a while.
No, don't shut up.
Because I was asked to do this, and my history of computing class was to make predictions about what we think are going to be big things technologically coming in the next decade. And my two were, I think, the Internet of Things and augmented and virtual reality are finally going to make it really mainstream. IoT, you've actually already pretty much see everywhere, only you don't recognize it because it's pretty well hidden. But VR and AR, yeah, especially based on, as a result of the pandemic and the result of things like Zoom, you're going to want people who are going to be able to socially connect better than they do on Zoom and better than they
Oh,
do
wow.
on Facebook.
So
And
you mean
AR and
virtual
VR.
reality as in like this, but virtually?
This isn't virtual reality. This is just
Yeah,
the
but
camera
so
stream.
when you said virtual
They're
reality,
like
I was
porn
thinking more,
videos
is
or
it video
whatever.
games? But you mean like actually feel like you're in a room with people and see them and
Yep, more 3D, more of a full sensory experience, that sort of thing, and that's coming. And that's actually one thing that
That's
Facebook has
Oculus,
just
isn't it?
done. When Facebook just bought Oculus, that's their gambit to try to get
wow,
into the
that's very
VR.
interesting.
And the only thing is, Oculus really sucks.
Yeah.
So
For now.
I mean, there are a ton of VR products that are available right now, and
Mhm.
they are at a price point that I would say, historically speaking, is available to the everyday consumer. Oculus has a variation that's available for $300, which I would
Yep.
think that's up there, but that's definitely graspable to the average day person.
I'll tell you who's going to make this happen, and it's going to be the same people, of course, who made the iPhone happen. It's going to be Apple. When Apple
yeah.
releases Apple's glasses, everyone's going to want to have them
Yeah.
for much the same reason that everyone wants to have an
Fashion,
iPhone and an iWatch and all that kind of stuff.
And Apple at this point, they're not even concerned how much they charge about stuff because people will just buy it. They just release stuff and they charge whatever they.
Hey, I know, I buy it. So
Well, that's the thing. That's the
Hey,
thing, though.
it's
You
magic.
guys are doing.
Why not?
You guys are doing another variation of inductive reasoning, especially with Apple, much like that algorithm. You have bought Apple for a long time. Your experiences of Apple have been good. You conclude off the complete set of data from those experiences that your next product from Apple will be good. Therefore, you buy Apple. You're doing the exact same thing.
What do you mean?
That's
no, well, not
that's
quite,
its quality.
because where I'm going is I've invested however many thousands of dollars into the Apple ecosystem and its software and all that stuff.
Well, then
And
that's
rather
a
than
sucking
having to
cost
reinvest
fallacy,
into
Craig.
everything new, I
Now,
stay where I
let me
am.
just kind of throw out there that I am really glad that Apple and Samsung are competing in the smartphone market. The longer they compete, the better the kinds of products we get to select. Choose.
Also, the Chinese as well. The Chinese are in it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but there are a lot of other smart device companies that went under. I mean, whatever,
Well,
BlackBerry, Research in Motion.
But
True.
that is conventional wisdom. However, I would also pose that a lot of the advancements we have seen, especially from Apple, have been declining in how much they go up, how much they advance the next model, or how much they actually add to it. This is actually history repeating itself.
Well,
if you
but
remember the
Craig's
Apple
right,
II and the
VR
Mac,
will be big. Craig's right.
but hold on, because the thing is, what we're watching right here is actually very interesting. What we see is a company that its name has been associated with quality, regardless if it brings in quality. It has come to the point where people have done it so many times before, they're starting to conclude, if Apple, then quality. For all, and here's where the fallacy comes in, for all instances. and then they're acting on that.
Although while we're committing fallacies, I would also point out that the new M1 series of Macintoshes are going to completely revolutionize machine learning because they give you a new portable platform that is more efficient by orders of magnitude than the existing products.
Let me just say, with the M1 has 16 billion
transistors.
16 billion.
And if you guys ever hear,
there are 100 billion neurons in the human brain. Now, our neurons connect with many thousands more other neurons than transistors connect with other transistors, but we're learning.
Well, machine learning could be a big thing as well.
You know,
it is a thing. Have any of you guys ever heard? I don't know if any of you guys are gamers or anything, especially old school gamers, but back in the day, there used to be a system known as the Atari Jaguar. Okay. And this came out at the same time where you had the Super Nintendo and you had the Sega Genesis. Okay. And this Atari Jaguar's whole selling point was, we have a higher bit resolution than either of these guys, a more powerful system. Therefore, everyone will buy our system. No one bought it. And the whole reason was, you had the more powerful system, but you didn't have any games. You didn't have any software. You didn't have anything, I would say, intrinsic into how we do things in the day-to-day life. And this comes into play also with Apple, because so many of the machines that Microsoft offers are so much more powerful and are so much cheaper, but everyone goes for Apple regardless in many cases. And the whole thing about that,
Microsoft is a good company.
The whole thing about that, though, is you look at that and you go, because people feel comfortable with Apple. They feel like it's more intrinsic that they can, use it without having to try all that. Go ahead, Craig.
So, first of all, Microsoft in general is not a hardware company. So they're not the ones who are offering the cheaper machines.
Never mind.
But the other thing is, of course, Apple went through the exact same thing that you're talking about with Atari. Apple had a product called the Pippin.
Yes.
And the Pippin was Apple's original game console, and they maybe sold, I'm guessing, a good 5 or 6 of them to probably people like me. Although I actually,
on a larger scale, Microsoft keeps doing the same thing. They have better machines than Sony, but Sony
has games.
Sony has the games.
They beat them.
But
Nintendo does the same thing to both of them.
A new strategy that is slowly but surely moving them into the game console market, and that's through the use of the Apple TV set-top box.
I don't have it.
They're actually liable to become players in there, and if they can hook that up with VR displays, you're going to see a shitload of Apple.
The thing is, I played on VR before, and I've had friends who have had an Oculus Rift, and I played on it. But the thing is, I don't own one myself. I don't even own one I could afford one for my PS4. I don't. And the whole thing was, when I played on it, I wasn't impressed by what was available to play, or the play wasn't enough for me that I wouldn't want to pay $300 just
add this on to my have an Oculus Go, and I think it was ultimately going to be a waste of money, but that's because the technology wasn't ready.
Well, there hasn't been as much content created for it yet.
Yes.
Given
our technology is still just developing, but I agree with you, Craig. I think that's going to be a big one.
Anyway, I'm gonna shut up for a while.
Well, and I think whoa, what's going on?
I don't know. Someone's freaking out.
I know. Rupender's on an iPhone, so it's Apple trying to spy on it.
The technology was, but cloud technology. I mean, that's probably going to be. We're all going to be doing stuff on the cloud. I imagine in the next 10 years.
I'm just going to make. I mean, Apple isn't infallible. I mean, in the late 90s, people were thinking Apple might die.
Yeah.
Macintosh.
The famous Michael Dell comment.
I mean, if you bought Apple stock in '99,
Oh
Yeah.
my God.
Yeah, within like 10 years, you could like $1,000 of Apple stock would have been like $1 million in 10 years.
Yeah.
Let's not even talk about it, man.
I mean, the whole thing, the funny thing that happened with that was the original Macintosh, when it came out, the Apple II was a superior machine in every single freaking way. The machine that had been out for years before. I mean, it allowed you to make any different types of any changes to it. It had an open system. It had a higher a higher clock. It could deal with more. It was in color. It wasn't black and white. The Macintosh, you had to have special tools for the Macintosh to get in it to operate. So you had to bring it to Apple for them to work on it. Not to mention, it didn't have integrated with it a keyboard or a mouse. You had to buy those fucking things separately. Wait, am I thinking wrong again?
You're thinking wrong, yeah.
I have an original Macintosh, and they have
Okay.
they have a very
You've been
unusual
listening to
keyboard
fake
and mouse.
news, Frank.
Yeah.
God damn
Fake
it.
news, Frank. Fake news.
Those
Whoa,
Russians
whoa,
who try
hold
to
on,
hack you,
hold
right?
on, hold on. Okay, I may have that part wrong, but the other
On
parts still
YouTube,
stand.
you're spreading fake news on YouTube, man.
No.
The Russians
I just
are finally
admitted
got
that I am
into
wrong.
Frank.
But it
I
wouldn't
just
be
admitted that I'm
YouTube
wrong.
unless you were spreading something fake.
I apologize for trumping it. Let's move on.
Well, Mike,
yeah.
you haven't talked for a while. What's your prediction for the next 10 years or so? Like, what's the big change?
This might sound like a cop-out, but I don't think there's any reasonable way we can make substantial predictions about 10 years from now. So
That's fair.
in my opinion, it's kind of like, let's say you're doing a break in pool. You're playing a game of pool and you do a break and you say, I predict it's going to be in this pocket. And then the balls go every which way, and then it does end up landing in that pocket. And you say, see, I told you. I think the number of combinations and the interconnectedness between everything is too vast that given ideas about dynamical systems and how many combinations there can be, I think a 10-year time frame is too uncertain. I think the same thing's true with elections. The same thing's true with politics. Like, I think you can never. Yeah, I think it's very hard to make a prediction like that.
I understand exactly what you're saying, Michael. And
I think you can make some predictions about technology.
part of me wonders, though, even though we can't make predictions accurately, I think it helps us to try to look forward and contemplate where we might be in 10 years.
We can do scenarios. I think you can get different paths.
Nobody is predicting this will happen. People are predicting that this is a possibility that deserves consideration.
Yeah, that I think is fair.
And one of the things that we used to do in a little philosophy group I had here locally is every year we had a discussion where we tried to make a prediction about humanity 50 years in the future, 100 years in the future, 500 years in the future, and 1,000 years in the future. And
that's kind of what I'm trying to do here. So yeah, that's Except I start with 10 years. I asked 10 years.
We did that every year, and the predictions I made this year are nothing like the ones I made last year.
Yeah, but nobody got it right in 2020. But if 10 years, it's a long enough period that.
But I think that it improves us by contemplating. Is all I'm saying.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
Let's say that someone makes a prediction about what would happen in 10 years. And let's say they Nostradamus us. They make it so vague, they make their predictions so abstract that everything it would seem would be right. And the thing is, I just would look at that and I go like, okay, but what was your premise leading up to those conclusions? Because your conclusion could be super abstract and right, but if your premise is not sound, your prediction doesn't fucking matter. it isn't justified in the least.
Well, you could treat it as a Pythian oracle and it's just a matter of interpretation.
Yeah, but I'm not a hack.
Is it
Anywho,
kind of like the
Inhale
difference?
some vapors and spout
Is
some
it kind
stuff.
of like the difference between astrology and astronomy?
yeah, basically. We already went about this when I brought up conspiracy theories and the modal fallacy. When someone goes, what could possibly happen in 10 years? What could possibly happen in these areas? And they bring up possible truths off of what they can conceive of what's going now. The problem that we have, much like with the pool balls, I don't know if you meant to reference Hume, but if you did, awesome.
Mhm.
Oh, fuck. Anywho, the problem is we come to the area where like, okay, those are nice predictions. How could we test that, or how could we bring it in any way that we could have a complete set of data to have that general conclusion?
Yeah, I wanted to.
Otherwise,
I'm sorry. I wanted to respond to what David said. So I guess Bruno phrased the question as, "What are our predictions?" So when you say a prediction linguistically usually implies some degree of confidence versus what are our possibilities. I love discussing possibilities. Like, could this be possible in 10 years? Could this be possible in 50 years? Imagine if. Do we think this is in the realm of? But prediction implies like confidence, or some
Well,
degree.
maybe next week.
I confess I didn't fully make that. I didn't define things that way in my thinking. So yeah,
Maybe next
I
week we
understand what
can.
you're saying.
Next week I'll prepare some more specific questions about the next 10 years, and we can kind of like go through if things are going to go one way or the
Well,
other, and have
one
some
of the
general
other things we did,
that could be
and this didn't work out as well because I think it added a layer of complexity that was too much work for each individual to satisfy themselves. But we tried to divide 10 years, 50 years, 100 years, 500 years, 1,000 years into areas of consideration like science, religion, politics, and that proved to be too hard. But those concepts have merit. What are politics going to be like in 50 years?
Yeah.
Or 10 years?
I mean,
I don't know what politics are going to be like tomorrow.
I mean,
I'm worried about the next 10 days.
the next 10 days, nobody really knows, really. But I mean, one question.
I hope they remove him.
One question that I think it's interesting, and I mean, who knows? But this right versus left divide that has taken over everything, and it's kind of weird because it's not even just political anymore. It's political, social, ideological. Everything gets lumped into this right or left, which leaves very little to actual reasoning. But one thing that is interesting is that this has been going on now for a while, and it has reached its peak in 2020, arguably. Is this going to go away, or is it going to stay the same? Is it going to become even more pronounced? I doubt it, but you never know.
That depends upon the leader of the next Republican Party, I think it depends upon like what would be the leader of the next Republican Party,
I don't know. I mean, the thing is, our lead, Biden coming in is another, old white guy for president. So maybe that will retain more of the status quo to make them feel like they don't need to go batshit crazy in response. But, they may also hold on to animosity for 4 years. Who knows?
So my
I don't.
answer, this might sound like a cop-out. I think there's a 1/3 chance that a lot of the tension will get resolved, a 1/3 chance it'll be pretty much the same, and a 1/3 chance it'll just go batshit crazy.
And then when that one of those outcomes happens, you go, ha ha, see, I told you there was a third chance of it happening.
Yeah, Michael,
and that third chance came about.
33% probability of like going batshit crazy is not true.
That's called hedging.
Yeah, that was a very hedged bet. Right there.
I know somebody that might not be familiar with that strategy. I might use that. Michael.
Yeah.
It's like, if you're betting on a soccer match, you bet for one team, you bet for the other team, and you bet on a draw.
I don't really believe I'm actually hedging though. Like I really believe it's very close to like a third, or like maybe it's a little more one than that. Maybe it's not a third. Maybe it's 25, 30, whatever. But yeah, that's just my that's kind of just my philosophy on like probability.
Yeah, it is hard to tell at this point. I agree that. I'll post these questions in advance, really, for next week, because some of these questions require some thinking. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I have to think. I don't know which one is more likely.
Well, the next big political battle is in the Republican Party. I mean, that party's going to tear itself apart. It already is.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, I think that's unlikely. I think that's pretty unlikely, but we could see a third party. That could be something interesting in politics.
I don't think so. So
I don't think so either. But
I think the problem is that, like, with Trump being the radical he is, all right, we had a factual evidence of about 78 million people voting for him, all right, which was a record turnout even for the Republican Party.
Mm-hmm.
So why would the Republican Party steer away from this winning formula?
If I was the algorithm, I wouldn't.
Right.
It's not a winning formula. They just lost.
So that basically tells me that, like, they may not. And if that's the case, then like the other party has
It's likely they will not.
Well, no.
So then it depends upon like what the counter response is going to be, to.
Look, in politics, all that matters is whether you can win your next election. The Republican Party in 2 years have gone from holding the presidency, holding the House, holding the Senate, to losing all.
Yep.
The fact that they've lost the House, the Senate,
this is
and the
not
presidency.
This is not a winning 2 years for them.
Right. The fact that there are Republicans saying they'll support impeachment, and there's an impeachment vote that's going to come next week.
So here's the counter to that. Like, I think Trump overreached. I think he went just completely batshit crazy. That he pissed off a lot of people. All right, but his policies, his underlying biases about white people, the power and this and that still holds true in this country. Yep. So if you can marshal and channel without going completely batshit crazy like what he did.
Oh yeah, Trump.
You would win. You would win. The Republican Party
it's a classical Machiavellian bait and switch, which is to say Trump's policies are good. Trump is not good. We got rid of Trump, but hey, we still got the policy with new X. Wouldn't you want to go for it again?
The granularity in what you're saying that occurs to me is, am I justified in what is the logic behind my agreement? Or what is it that this person has said that I think is good?
Mm-hmm.
And what unit of measurement did I apply?
That's being too rational, and that's being too evolved thinking. That's not what the present circumstances are. He's already created the divide. He's already created inherent biases among a lot of people. And so if you can resonate, if you can reach out to them with a resonating message, which is not extreme, but still empowers them with their conscious bias, I think you'll get them. And you'll get them in a large number. And if that's the case, then the Republican Party is not going to change.
Yeah.
I actually agree.
I got you, Craig.
Yeah, I mean, people are pointing out that in the chat that
I don't think that what I was saying
with that strategy, which is true.
Bruno, how's the fatherhood, by the way?
Oh, it's good, man. It's good. Challenging.
Oh, man, can I see some more enthusiasm, man?
No, it's good, man. It's good. It's good and
Are you getting
challenging
enough sleep?
and good.
Are you
We'll
getting
have
enough
some.
sleep?
We got to do a Zoom and have some wine and talk about fatherhood.
Okay, sounds good. All right, I'm gonna have to go. So, but good talking to all of you.
Yep.
All right, thank
Yeah.
you, Rupinder. Yeah, I mean it's yeah, we've been talking for a while. Is there a different? But I think next week, yeah, it would be interesting to come up with some. I mean, I have some now, but we don't have the time. But come up with some questions that are a little bit more specific, as kind of like what you're saying, actually, David. You know, like in politics, you know, what we're going to see in the next 10 years, and then come up with some judgments of value as well on what we want to see and what would make the most sense for people to do and to think, but not obviously not just politics, you know, religion as well, technology, economy, you know, and like the economy, a lot of all the main things. But so I would say, do you guys have like a topic that you want to discuss before we end it tonight? Something like Sashir, you've been wanting to talk about the fall of civilizations thing. Do you also want to talk about why are you interested in the why civilizations fall and why is that interesting to you? And
Just look at what's happened this week.
yeah, so that's you're kind of like correlating that to how if America has reached its peak and it might fall. Is that the angle here? Or?
Oh, I think America's passed its peak already. We've been peak oil. We're past peak America. It's already been passed.
Okay. What makes you say that?
Again, look at what happened this past week.
Well,
I mean, yeah, the Trump is a sign of the decline of America. He's not exactly the cause. He's just hastening it.
I think he's more effect than cause. He's a little of both, but he's more effect than cause. And I think the cause is the inability of large swaths of our society that can't distinguish between celebrity and greatness.
Yes, that's true,
that's
but
an
this
excellent
was
point.
already happening.
You know what? I don't want to say this because it may seem mean to.
And David, you just described like exactly what the problem was in the last 5 years. Wow, that was really good.
I mean, I see it more as this nation is changing and the people are unable to change with it. And I'm sorry to the older people in this chat, but this
Bob
is
Dylan.
Yeah.
Talk about you, Carolyn.
Pretty much what's happening is, the millennials came along, first generation to surpass the baby boomers in the amount of people and their voting. And the government's at this weird turning point where it doesn't know if it wants to represent the baby boomers or the millennials as their two big baits. And what we're seeing is millennials are super trying to, long-term get the government progressively up to an area that we can have sustainability, whereas the baby boomers are trying to keep it in that area that make America great again, make it that thing that we once knew, that we love, and hang on. And here's where the cruel part comes in.
Largely, I agree with you.
People need to die.
Too broad a brush.
And Gen X gets screwed yet again.
Yeah, they do. I'm sorry, Gen X, but you got screwed so many ways. I mean, to be fair, all generations get screwed.
Fully a third of the participants in this meeting did not go through what you just described.
Yeah.
A third. So I don't disagree with what you're saying. I'm really amazed at some people that I went to school with that don't even know how to operate email.
Oh dear.
And I think
Yeah, I know.
that's
I work with some of
pathetic.
those.
And but at the same time,
It's
we're not all the same.
no,
We're not all like that.
I mean, the thing completely that our government is based on representatives representing us, and we're at a point where two of the largest generations are so different in so many aspects that it's not necessarily a dichotomy where representing one would say not the other, but it's one where, because compromise, because we're all in that same system, often certain areas have to be ignored. And we're getting to that point where I'm looking at and I'm like, people need to go away. Time needs to pass so this country can move on so it doesn't just die where it is. I mean, this is going to be horrible because I'm going to be old. And some days, some people are going to be saying the same thing about me.
Don't trust anybody over 30.
Yeah.
So are you saying we need a Logan's Run situation?
No, but there are.
No.
I would say there are problems in every generation. Really, I mean, I think it's a little bit more complex than that.
I mean, yeah, but when was the last time? You know how many people that vote from a nursing home? What the voting percentage in a nursing home is? It's around 90%. And the thing is, when's the last time you went to a nursing home and you talked to the people in that area about political matters? And the thing is, you get a huge. I know.
I try never to do that, Frank.
I mean, when my grandma was in hospice and my mom worked at a nursing home, I got to talk to people in there and I respected them and anything, but I would never ask these people for political advice about what was going on at that time.
And did you change their mind?
No. I know a sunken cost fallacy when I see it.
Yeah,
there is no changing here.
I think democracy in general. I think it's not just America, but I think democracy in general. I think there's gonna be a trial. You know, these are gonna be trialing times, and democracy is gonna have to figure out its stuff. You know, in the next. I think that's one of the things that is gonna happen in the next 10 or 20 years. And now there are real alternatives. You know, China is becoming a world power, and you have theocracies all over the world. You have Russia coming back. So
I swear to God, if we
democracy is
revert
its
to
worst
divine
enemy.
rule,
Really, I mean, what?
I swear to God, if we revert to divine rule theory, oh my God.
Probably not, because they're not the strongest. But a reasonably big part of the world, unfortunately, has. You know, 20 years from now, it seemed like that was the past. It's not the past anymore. But the biggest problem of democracy right now, it's democracy itself. You know, what we just saw happen was really democracy imploding. But it's still to be decided what the actual outcome is going.
All right. So help me understand. And this is not rhetorical. I really am asking. I'm not sure that I completely understand how anything that happened the other day or 2 days ago could be viewed as democracy, period.
Well, it was the democratic process, but working badly, right? The transition of power didn't go peacefully for the first time, and it did end up going. You know, it worked.
Okay.
On the same day.
But it was much harder than it has been.
I guess where I'm struggling is that I have not fully engaged thinking of democracy solely in terms of a dictionary definition.
In terms of
and
what,
I haven't thought about perceiving democracy solely in terms of freedom and principles. And those are two different things. So are you saying that democracy as a principle failed?
No, I'm not even saying that it failed necessarily, but what I'm saying is that the fact that there wasn't a peaceful transition of power per se in the most stable democracy in the world and the oldest democracy in the world, it could have been much worse. It can still be much worse, hopefully not. But
I guess what I'm trying to
the rise of the far right and populism, I mean, that's a thing.
Okay.
You can interpret it in many different ways, right? But that's one phenomenon.
I totally agree. That's a thing.
And I'm not, and the problem when I say democracy is going to have to figure out its stuff, I'm not even just mentioning that. I'm not even just referring to that. I'm also referring to the fact that what Craig has pointed out, other people have pointed out. There is a problem. Like we don't like there's a separation between the population and the people that represent them. And this separation has become more egregious, people are more aware of it. And that is a big problem of representative democracy that we're going to have to deal with. And like I said, also the fact that there are alternative systems that seem to be working in certain parts of the world, that's another thing. So I'm definitely a Democrat. I mean, I believe in democracy, and but I think there are challenges, and there will be challenges. That's what I'm pointing out.
Well, I guess the only thing I'm trying to figure out is I'm just trying to make sure that I follow you and am able to discern whether you're talking about democracy as a principle of freedom or democracy as how we've done it. Does that make sense? Does that question even make sense?
You're muted, Craig. I don't know if you want to talk, but well, I'm talking about democracy as we've done it. I think, like as a system of government.
Okay.
As the system of government in the West that has won the war and that has become the de facto system of government for much of the world, the West. But there are signs that things are not great. I would argue. I mean, I think that's going to be one of the questions that needs to be answered. And I hope democracy wins, as in, I hope we can have another big conversation, long conversations. I think it's interesting because now, it's interesting to talk about the types of government, right? So it would be interesting to have a conversation to talk about democracy and its alternatives. And what that looks like today and what it might look like in the following decades.
I believe the failures of democracy, and this kind of loops back into what we talked. You remember when we were talking earlier about the responsibility of Facebook and the responsibility of people mitigating what people say on Facebook if it's factual, and it came to an epistemological problem from my standpoint.
Absolutely.
And I would
social
say
media as well, right?
And I would say the greatest failure of democracy, as we have seen historically, is epistemological, is knowledge-based, is the idea that if everyone is attributed a 1 for their decision, that a decision that has more quantity is necessarily better. Which this is what Socrates brought up, or Plato's Socrates brought up, all the way back to the founders of democracy and philosophy. And these two things coincide, where I would say, well, let's say Facebook, instead of saying this thing is factual, goes and asks a huge survey is this thing factual? Instead of taking that area, more people vote for it being factual rather than it not being factual. Does that make it factual?
No.
That's damn right it fucking doesn't. That's a bandwagon fallacy.
We're
Now,
just
we
saying
could
who's
go on.
the arbiter of truth? Like, who's the ultimate final source of what decides truth?
You know, I watched an interview with a person who was a VP at Google, and I can't remember her name, but she was an important person. She made decisions that affected how all of us interact with Google, you know, and what Google says to us. And she was asked by a reporter if Google biased the search results. And she says, oh no, we're unbiasing them. How can you unbias something?
You
For
could.
8 billion people.
Well, no. You could through simple negation.
Without making some judgment about what those 8 billion people should think.
I mean, if by judgment we mean any type of rational, then no, you couldn't. But if we just go by simple negation and go where X is any given person, if X has not seen any given area, we show it.
Well,
we find a simple.
I understand what you're saying, but my concern is that whether the head of a corporation or an artificially intelligent machine that I have never spoken to, don't know anything about, should be making those decisions.
I mean, I would never tell
about what I should see when I type in a search.
I mean, they do.
Which I like. I think it's great if I'm looking for new blinds for the windows, you know?
Yeah.
But I wonder if it's great if somebody is looking for information to support their Republican ideas. They're going to stay in the silo. Don't we want to break people out of the silo?
Well, the thing is, you can lead a horse to water. You can't make him drink. I can give you the means, and many of you do have the means to get outside of your silo right now.
That's totally true. That's totally true. But if they ask you about it, and you only give them the answers that you like, are you really helping them?
Well, I'm not actually giving them the answers that I like. I'm giving them the answers that I think they will like. Is the kicker. And the thing is, I can only go off the information you provide me with my algorithm, or as
it seems to me what you can't escape there is it's your assessment of what you think I would like.
I have to go off the data provided. I have to go off what you've given me. We talked about poker earlier and the faces and areas and like this. I can't go off what you don't provide me. If you don't provide me data for a premise, I have no premise for it.
It's all a wonderful, impressive power to deploy on behalf of humanity if you're looking for a new iron.
Well, but what is the basis of advertising?
But not if you're looking up information about the leadership of our country.
Well, let's say I did provide you with the information that you didn't want, which this happens on areas like YouTube, Google, and stuff. People often have the option to say, hide this ad. I don't want to see this information or anything like that. And yeah, I do too. And the thing is, when it then receives that data from us doing it, is it to say, well, bollocks to you, I'm going to keep unsiling you. To hell with that, and trying to throw it. No, eventually it's going to go, hey, if I keep bothering this person, I may lose a customer. I may lose somebody using, it'd be something detrimental to itself at that point, a business detrimental to its own business.
Logically, you would think that. But I think many publicists employed in large companies and corporations are totally oblivious to the logic that you just iterated. And the example I give for that is if you've ever watched a streamed television program or movie that's interrupted with ads, and you see the same ad 6 or 7 times in a 1-hour show, it becomes an irritant.
Yes.
To see the same ad over and over.
Right.
What the buyers of that advertising inventory don't fully understand is that model is based on viewers tuning in to broadcast television at so many thousands per second. And so you know you're going to be able to speak to so many thousands of people more with your ad 10 seconds or 30 seconds from now than your ad right now. So it makes sense to repeat the ad over and over. That does not happen with a streamed movie or a television show.
Right. That's targeted advertising. That's
right.
the key of how it works now.
Yeah. What I'm saying is that if you see the same ad 5 or 6 times in a 30-minute show, then that means that the person who bought that ad inventory does not know that a person is unable to tune in the middle of that show. They're going to start at the beginning and see their ad over and over and over 6 times. And so instead of being an entertaining interlude at best, your product and your company are going to become an irritation.
That's where we have the beauty of analogy. I don't have to show you the same thing over and over again. I can show you a similar thing over and over again, or something just different enough in its uniqueness that it isn't quite the same. Think about companies like Geico that you see playing on areas or anything. How many ads do they have? They don't have a ad. They have 10 ads. They have, a set of ads that they can target you over and over again without you seeing the same thing over and over again, where they don't irritate you. That's part of the game.
Right, but it's more than that. Is you're looking for receptive customers. Yeah. Again, if I'm interested in golf and I'm searching YouTube sites about how to improve my swing, I'm all of a sudden going to get a bunch of ads for golf, for like buying new drivers or buying new balls. It's a targeted ad.
I mean, to be fair, if a person didn't follow inductive reasoning to this degree on marketing, forget marketing or any situation, you have to understand, we would label them insane as a society. That is the definition of insanity, that you would do something of a similar premise over and over again, expecting a different result on the inability to draw that general conclusion. So that an algorithm is trying to do it with analogy it's how it basically makes it so it's not that problem.
It's analytics is the term. It's basically looking for tendencies.
Yes.
I think a lot of it, I think we need to flip the question on its head a little bit. We talk about being fed the same thing over and over again. What if we flipped it and said the issue is that our ability to bump into things that we don't normally encounter is reduced? So there's lots of value into bumping into something that you wouldn't normally have done. Let's say you really like chocolate ice cream, so you keep eating chocolate, but then you run into someone and they have peanut butter ice cream or whatever, and you're like, that's an interesting idea. Maybe I should try that. So in my opinion, your ability to bump into random things that you weren't expecting is reduced.
But this was where I'd come into, and I'd say we're assuming the person that is bumping into this thing hasn't bumped into it before, or that it's coming about and they haven't conceived the possibility of this thing before. They're saying, peanut butter is a thing. I didn't know it was a thing. I discovered it, and it could be better or worse than chocolate, as I haven't tried it before. Whereas we're not saying they experienced peanut butter a while ago, had a value of peanut butter a while ago, and then are just kind of, when you rediscover something, you bump into something after a while, and are just going, it's good or bad because I don't remember the value judgment prior to that. Does that make sense? I think
I'm a little confused, but maybe. But I'm interested in it. Explain it one more time.
Okay.
Right. But this is the thing, though. Humans by nature are tribal. This idea that humans really want to experience new things isn't necessarily true.
I think it's complete bullshit, by the way. If you observe human tendencies, humans flock towards very, a group of things. You watch what a human does over a 100-day period. About 90 days of that are going to be routine that you could pick out. You wouldn't be able to predict exactly, but you'd be able to get yourself to an area where you'd be like, yeah, I'm pretty sure I know what this person's going to do to this day and this day and this day. And there's only a handful of outliers. Now, I'm not discrediting those outliers or saying they don't exist or they don't matter because they're so far apart. I'm merely just saying that these 90 days right here constitute would be where my prediction would most likely lie. It's based on my prediction, not on what is. So it'd be possibly true.
Guys, let's. I think this is a good time to end it. And actually, we were being watched by some people, so thank you. Thank you.
Jeepers.
Yeah, we have some viewers, so thanks a lot for watching, guys. Allison is watching, but also Ben Stegman. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching, guys.
Before we go,
and guys, look at the, if you guys go on YouTube, you can look at their comments, because they did post a lot of comments. We didn't answer their questions, but there was a secondary conversation. So that's something that we can do.
1 second, I can answer all the questions at once.
Yeah, they have some good questions. It's just that we completely
in the comment section.
I live for questions.
Hey, Bruno.
Yeah.
Before we go, can you just indulge me for a minute for a prediction? That
of course, man. We don't need to go if you don't want to go.
This will be a good way to.
What?
This will be a good way to go.
Oh no, that's beautiful, man. Let's have some music to end it.
Because you're wondering how to predict the future. This is primarily for Craig.
And our viewers are going to appreciate it.
In the year 2525, if man is still alive, if woman can survive, they might find. In the year 3535, ain't gonna need no proof of life. Everything you think to and say is in the pill you took today. In the year 4545, ain't gonna need your teeth or your eyes. You will find a thing to chew. Nobody's gonna look at you. And it kind of just goes on like that over.
All right, that's awesome. So sure, you just want MVP, man.
Right? Yeah. Just letting you know, in the year 25, that's my prediction. You're gonna get everything in a pill. You're not gonna need teeth or eyes.
Like, yeah. Well, I mean, that's a good one. I mean, there's a possibility. As Michael would say, there's definitely a possibility there.
Yes, exactly. Yes. So
I
just
love
for your
that prediction.
Just for the boomers.
I'm not like a huge Pixar fan. I like it, but I think they're mostly children's movies, so I don't love it as much as other people. But Wall-E is a cool, very cool prediction. You have all those people in that spaceship that they just got too fat to even move, and they're just basically lazy fat people, and that's kind of what we're turning into. So I think that prediction is sort of like what you're talking about, Sashir.
Oh, that's not me. That's Zargan and Evans who wrote the song.
Is that? Yeah, I didn't know the song.
It was a big hit in. I'm trying to remember when it came out. It doesn't say when it came out.
I think that had been in the late 60s or maybe early 70s.
Oh, yeah, David, you're on mute.
1968. 1968 was what they done.
Good year. Yeah.
Yes.
David, you're on mute. So.
Okay, does that work?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh,
Yep.
yeah.
We can hear
So-
you now.
I was going to say, I was trying to say, Bruno, I really like you and I agree with what you're saying. But just so I understand, did you just call me lazy and fat?
No, I called all of us potentially lazy and fat. And
He was talking about Wall-E.
That applies to
And-
me for sure. I mean, I'm getting
it's
fat.
good-
Who the hell are you calling fat? I go to the gym 5 days a week.
Well,
Who the
that's you.
hell
That's
do
that.
you
That's
think
you. That's
are?
definitely not me. So I'm not calling you fat, Frank. But
All
Hey,
right,
I'm saying Wall-E is a Disney movie, and that's what Disney wants us to be. They like little cute robots and fat humans. That is the Disney future.
that's Disney. Well, Brave New World. That's another one, right? I mean, we're turning into
Yeah.
Brave New. Not with the orgies. A lot less sexy, but
Well,
with the-
I'm just in it. I'm just in it for the drugs and the orgies. Actually, that's
Well,
probably good.
I'm holding out
take
for
a-
Stranger in a Strange Land myself.
Yeah.
But
Stranger in a Strange Land. Yeah, I mean, some of those things definitely
And
ring true.
it's the proletariat.
Is that Vietnam? The Vietnam
No.
Communist Party? Or?
It's the global proletariat.
Oh,
It
is
is.
it? It's just
It's
because
not simple concepts of nation.
it's just that the Vietnam flag. I think it has that symbol and it has similar colors. That's why I thought. But,
Yes, it's a global proletariat.
Yeah.
Uh,
Workers unite, right?
Yes, I sent you guys a video. So
Well, that's
Watch out on
yeah. We're running towards the end of the discussion, so there's not going to be time for that. But another thing that will be challenged is capitalism, in the sense that not because it's going to be taken over by communism, but we are going to have, and we'll talk about it next week. But stuff like automation, and income inequality and all that. I mean, that's going to be.
I know I already
challenge the
addressed.
economic system.
I know I already addressed David in a past comment about this, but the categories capitalism and socialism are outdated terms. in
Yes, I agree.
economic
I agree.
sense.
But
So-
what I mean is the.
All right, so help me by telling me what terms are appropriate today.
Command economy, market economy, and traditional economy are the
Alright.
current economic terms used.
So in what ways does the phrase command economy, because I have to confess I'm not as familiar with that.
A command economy is any type of regulatory economy that has oversight from the government onto the areas of the economy.
Okay. But actually, my question is, what
Yeah.
is it about a command economy that's different from capitalism, so that I understand what the differences are?
The differences from it, depending on the area of capitalism that you're talking about, there's a broad range. Mercantile, Smith's original area. The main difference, though, is not a focus on a free market, instead on a set of regulations that can basically make sure that you don't have certain companies getting too big. You have certain needs for the people who are in that economy that are always being met, that are handled by elected or any type of governmental oversight representatives that enforce it upon the companies in that economy. It's not a full-on socialist take.
Yeah, I guess
But-
what confuses me is that those are not, I understand what you're saying,
Yeah.
and everything that you're saying, I also have a concern about. I guess I'm just not really clear what all of those issues have to do with capitalism per se.
It has to do with capitalism because people still use the term socialism and capitalism all the time. You guys probably see this to refer to economies that exist in the world right now. It's like using outdated categories. Like if you guys were using a medical textbook from Galen to try to diagnose somebody with a disease, Galen's a really old doctor. Okay, with someone with a disease, or I walk up to you and say, like,
Well,
what's
all right,
wrong
all
with you?
I understand exactly what you're saying, Frank, and I think that's very important. But at the same time, what if if you have the same outlook on the future and the moral stance of humanity, but all you are familiar with are older words, not newer ones, then aren't older people or people who use older terms your allies rather than your enemies?
you're used to older categories or older terms, and so those are the ones you use.
Right, right.
Coming
And
to.
so,
And that would be fine.
yeah.
But then I would also come to you and I'd say, you can use those terms. The only problem is, as you want them to pertain to the world that we're in right now, you have to understand these terms have become outdated as categories because
I understand that. I guess the struggle is, how do you persuade people that still use those terms that might agree with you, except for the words that are used?
If they disagree with you, basically just because of a word,
I'm
then
not
you have to
asking
find.
if they disagree with you. I'm asking if they agree with you.
Okay.
Well, that's the culture war.
But you use older words.
Okay, if they agree or disagree with you, you find a way to isolate the use of the word to find they're vitriolic or amenable to it in any phrase. You create a contradictory in a way that if you agree to this, you necessarily shouldn't agree to this, but the word is the same. Ergo, why are you agreeing to this and not agreeing to this? It's just because this word's being used twice.
You lost me a little bit there, but I think I kind of understand. Yeah.
Well, it's like, we don't use the term Oriental or colored.
Well, you'd like to think that, but you've never.
Boy, we're starting new discussion.
Yeah, that's true. As a man of the Orient, apparently, yes.
We're starting new. Well, there's much to talk about.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Bruno.
2021, we're going to have lots of podcasts, and Allison and Ben will be able to watch as well. Allison, and if Ben wants to, they can participate as well. But yeah, thanks for the discussion, guys. It was great. It was a great discussion.
Yep, good talk. See you later.
So
have a good night.
So much for participating and for watching, guys.
All right.
Bye.
You all next week, same time, same place.
Same bat
channel.
same
Same bat
channel.
Good one, Craig. Bye.
Bye, guys.